Ethiopia and Eritrea. Two neighbors, bound by history, geography, and intertwined destinies. Yet, despite years of peace agreements, diplomatic talks, and even shared economic projects, a deep divide persists between these two nations. To truly understand what keeps them apart, we must go back and explore their complex history, the wars they fought, and the wounds that have yet to heal. Eritrea's story begins as a colony of Italy. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, European powers scrambled for control over Africa. Eritrea became an Italian possession, while Ethiopia remained one of the few independent African states. After World War II, Eritrea was placed under British administration and then federated with Ethiopia. In 1962, Emperor Haile Selassie annexed Eritrea, making it a full part of Ethiopia. This action ignited one of Africa's longest and most devastating liberation struggles. The Eritrean People's Liberation Front, or EPLF, waged a 30-year war against Ethiopian regimes. The conflict was brutal and relentless, claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands. Villages were destroyed, families torn apart, and a generation grew up in the shadow of war. By 1991, Eritrean fighters had marched into Asmara, the capital, signaling the end of Ethiopian control. In 1993, Eritrea became a fully independent nation, celebrated by its people and recognized internationally. But independence did not guarantee friendship. In 1998, just 5 years after Eritrea's formal recognition, the two countries plunged into another war. The immediate cause was the border town of Badme, a small but symbolically significant area. However, the roots of the conflict ran deeper. Decades of unresolved tension, national pride, and political distrust made war almost inevitable. This conflict lasted 2 years, leaving tens of thousands dead, displacing millions, and further deepening mutual suspicion. The Algiers Agreement of 2000 was meant to end the war and provide a clear border resolution. The Eritrea-Ethiopia Boundary Commission awarded Badme to Eritrea. Yet Ethiopia hesitated to fully accept the ruling, leaving both nations in a state of no war, no peace. Borders remained closed, trade stagnated, and ordinary people suffered. Families divided by the border could not reconnect. Communities along the frontier lived in constant uncertainty. Fast forward to 2018. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed made a bold move. He extended an olive branch to Eritrea, signaling an end to decades of hostility. The two countries signed a historic peace agreement. Borders reopened, flights resumed, and people began to hope for a future without fear. The international community praised this move, and Abiy Ahmed was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. It seemed for a moment that Ethiopia and Eritrea could finally turn the page. However, the reality on the ground remains complicated. Trust is fragile. Decades of war, propaganda, and betrayal cannot be erased overnight. Ordinary citizens remember the pain more than the politicians do. Suspicion lingers, and small disagreements have the potential to escalate quickly. Political interests also play a significant role. Eritrea remains under the long rule of President Isaias Afwerki, who has been in power since independence without democratic elections. Ethiopia, meanwhile, is a federal state, dealing with multiple internal conflicts, from the Tigray region to Oromia and beyond. The 2020-2022 war in Tigray involved temporary cooperation between Eritrean forces and the Ethiopian Federal Army. But this alliance was strategic, not a sign of genuine reconciliation. The border issue is another dividing factor. While international bodies have attempted to demarcate boundaries, disputes remain unresolved in practice. Local communities continue to face insecurity, with some areas experiencing harassment or forced conscription. Geography, in this case, continues to fuel division. Economically, both countries face immense challenges. Eritrea's economy is largely closed, dependent on remittances and a few key exports. Ethiopia struggles with debt, inflation, and instability. Trade and infrastructure projects that could benefit both nations are hampered by political tensions and lack of trust. Collaboration remains limited, and potential growth is lost. On the human level, the divisions are felt most acutely. Families that were separated decades ago have limited opportunities to reunite. Youth in Eritrea face compulsory military service, limiting freedom and opportunities. In Ethiopia, internal displacement and conflict create uncertainty for millions. The human cost of political division is profound and ongoing. There are also lingering ideological differences. Eritrea has maintained a one-party system with strong military control. Ethiopia, despite being a federal democratic state, is fractured, with ethnic tensions shaping politics. These differences make alignment challenging, even when both nations share mutual interests. The regional context cannot be ignored. Both countries are in the Horn of Africa, a strategic area that attracts international attention. Foreign powers, regional alliances, and economic interests create additional pressures that can exacerbate divisions. Ethiopia and Eritrea must navigate not only their bilateral issues but also the influence of outside actors who have their own agendas. So, what still divides Ethiopia and Eritrea today? It is a combination of historical grievances, political distrust, border disputes, human suffering, economic challenges, and the broader regional context. The shadow of the past remains strong, and while agreements can be signed, changing hearts and minds takes time. Yet, the story is not yet over. Geography cannot be changed, and both nations will always share a border. They share languages, culture, and intertwined histories. If leaders and communities prioritize trust, dialogue, and cooperation over power and pride, there is hope for a future that is more peaceful, prosperous, and united. The Horn of Africa watches closely. The people hope. The nations remain cautious. Ethiopia and Eritrea still stand divided in many ways. But the potential for reconciliation exists, waiting for courage, vision, and time to make it a reality.